I'm Lana Payne, and I'm the national president of Unifor. We represent 320,000 workers across this country, including 70,000 in federally regulated private sectors, such as air, road, rail, and marine, as well as telecommunications and media. And today I'm actually joining you from Nova Scotia in Atlantic Canada, where over 200 Unifor local leaders have gathered for their annual meeting. Today, they did something very special. They thanked our 230 members who work at Autoport, a subsidiary of the very powerful and profitable CN Rail. They were thanked by our members for their courage. Courage because for 5 weeks on strike this winter, these workers faced an employer who used scabs, replacement workers, to try to break their spirit, to demoralize them, to prevent them from getting a fair collective agreement during an affordability crisis. CN did this as Bill C-58 was being debated and supported by your colleagues in the House of Commons. It is never, as B said, an easy decision to withdraw your labor, to risk it all, to go without a paycheck in order to fix workplace injustices and improve working conditions. C-58 is crucial to protecting the rights and dignity of Canadian workers. The basic rights to collectively bargain and to strike when necessary have been fought for by workers over generations, protected in the Charter of Rights and Freedoms and affirmed by the Supreme Court. This law is also necessary to modernize our system of labor relations to reflect the current social and economic context of this country and our world, where increased corporate power and wealth require an effective counterbalance. In our view, C-58 is about restoring balance in bargaining between workers and employers. It's about leveling the playing field and upholding the principles of fairness and justice in labor relations. It is not often that legislation as important as this to workers passes with the full support of the House of Commons, as C-58 just recently did. This broad support tells us that the advocacy by workers for our own rights over many decades has finally paid off. The very purpose of a strike, to apply economic pressure on the employer to reach a fair agreement, is fundamentally undermined when employers are able to deploy scabs, or as often the case, threaten to use them while we actually sit across a bargaining table from them. The use of replacement workers makes labor disputes more acrimonious and extends the length of those disputes up to 6 times longer in Unifor's experience. Canada's business lobby organizations, the Chamber of Commerce, FEDCO, Canadian Manufacturers and Exporters, and the CFIB have aggressively fought this law. But I must highlight that there are numerous Canadian examples of employers who are prepared to violate workers' rights to bargain collectively and use replacement workers at this very moment, which is why I'm before you today to stress once more the necessity of this legislation. I've learned over many years in this work that replacement workers don't help parties get a negotiated deal. They never have, and they never will. They are part of an employer strategy to starve workers out, to render them helpless, to demoralize them, and to accept less. I want to be clear. The issue we face is not that some employees have too much economic power, a ridiculous notion under the economic system in which we live. It is that employers have too much economic power and have not invested in building the resilient supply chains and infrastructures that they are supposedly responsible for. There are issues such as climate change, global conflict, health, and economic disasters that prove a much greater threat to our supply chains. I will stress their impact is not immediately known or predictable. Peaceful labor relations in our country, and indeed all over the world, rely on the principles of fair and free collective bargaining, principles that improve living and working conditions for Canadian workers. Anti-scab legislation has been implemented successfully in other jurisdictions, both nationally and internationally. Quebec and British Columbia have these laws, and others are starting to follow suit. We call on you, Senators, to uphold the broad-based political and democratic consensus that has been built and speedily move C-58 through the Senate. Thank you very much for your time today, and I'm available to answer any of your questions.